needing to contain at least 20% of the dwelling units given tentative approval. Per our request letter, the ratio requested was due to the economics and the efficiency of the construction. This was dictated by the applicant. It should be noted that the total percentages in the modification request is less than 100%. Okay, there was a corrective action that corrected the ratios for the residential development to be 60% in stage 1, 21% in stage 2, and 19% in stage 3, and indicated that 100% of the commercial development is proposed for stage 1.
And we need a modification to have the essentially front loading the 60% residential, and to provide any of the commercial until at least 50% of the residential is completed under the existing ordinance.
I believe so, yes.
So that's why we made the modification request that we want to front load the townhomes, because that's the most efficient way to develop that portion of the project. Is that correct?
As I understand from the developer, yes.
And then there's number 5, only allowed a deviation of a certain percentage for each of the phases to be developed, and obviously, 60, 21, and 19 would have deviation of greater than afforded under the ordinances, so that's the basis for that request.
Correct.
And then under item number 7, there's indication that we withdraw the modification request regarding percentage of landscaping to be completed.
Correct.
And we can just sort of hit on the bold items and what additional information we provide in response to those items.
Sure. Comment number 10 was a comment from the engineer indicating that the common open space was disjointed and appears secondary to the layout. The exception being the walk-bike path, which is proposed in stage 1. It indicated access to each open space was undefined, and this is again in reference to our initial tentative plan submission from October. Our response was the layout plan had been revised to depict additional access to the proposed open space areas. However, most of the open space areas can be accessed from walking trails or sidewalks that pass through the referenced open spaces. We indicated that would be discussed further at the next planning commission meeting. I was not in attendance. My colleague Justin Masseria was there, so if that discussion needs to be further, he could probably weigh in on that.
Then we also reference a waiver request as the third paragraph under item number 10.
Correct.
And that regards that the ordinance 313 provided information and requirements for open spaces and did not have a minimum space requirement for each individual open space, but the township zoning ordinance otherwise provides a 1 acre minimum. So we've requested a waiver on that item with some legal argument about why we believe maybe a waiver is not required.
Correct. For this time, yes.
And then what information did we provide with response to the demonstration of feasibility of water, sanitary, stormwater, under item number 11?
So Stackhouse Bensinger prepared a sanitary sewer narrative, which estimated projected sanitary sewer flows, in particular the number of EDUs, in this case 1 per each unit, and without knowing final tenant or occupier of any of the IOP lots, a reservation of 1 EDU per each of those lots. That was submitted to both the water and sewer authorities to assess and gain serviceability letters from both.
And that could be imposed as a requirement, a condition for approval?
Sure, yes.
comment was and what revisions were made to the plan.
Sure. Comment number 13 indicated the plan does not clearly identify the intent of street parking or dedication of proposed streets. Clarification is necessary to determine certain minimum design requirements. As indicated earlier, the applicant proposes to dedicate, and our response is, the applicant proposes to dedicate roads A and B, and proposes parking on one side of Road B. In the event of the snow emergency, on-street parking will be prohibited, and residents will be permitted to park on commercial property pursuant to an easement agreement to be prepared to address such shared parking during snow emergencies. With a note that required parking for each lot and townhouse are met on each individual lot within driveways and garages.
And on item 15, there's a comment regarding open space without showing active open space recreational facilities. Can you describe what revisions were made to the plan to address that comment?
Sure. Certain areas of the open space were identified as being active recreation, such as playground areas. It indicated in our response that the applicant had discussion with the Planning Commission and the Recreation Committee and has expressed a willingness to contribute towards improvements on existing township-owned property to allow for increased recreational activity to all township residents. In the event that the parties cannot come to an agreement for such off-site improvements, the revised layout plan depicts the required recreational facilities. So there's ongoing discussions with township entities to see how we can help.
And the walking path that's depicted going through a number of those open spaces, in your view, would that all be active recreational area?
Okay, it's I forget the actual width, but it would be for walking and biking, so it's of a width that would permit active recreation.
Under item number 16, there was a clarification that we're not proposing to dedicate any of the open spaces, is that correct?
Correct.
16B. Under 16E, there was supplemental information provided regarding projected student
Yes.
students per housing and the capacity of the school.
Correct.
And then we'll have additional testimony about that from Mr. McEwen, the particulars.
Yes.
And then down to number 18, there was a question about access to structures within the IOP. We had just shown one large lot on the 1024 submission. Can you describe again what the response was to the comment that's depicted on the plan that's been projected up there? I guess we should mark that A18 and A19.
And the plans you're referring to are the revised tentative PRD plan dated 12/6/2022.
For clarification, is sheet 118 and sheet 219?
Yeah, I think we should do it. I think that's where I got to for the count. I think these were 16 and 17 for the 1024 submission.
So in regards to the comment number 18 from Craft Engineering comment letter, our response was the revised layout plan sheets depict the proposed access to the IFE parcel, and these were discussed with PennDOT at a scoping meeting held on November 15th, 2022. We received comments from PennDOT on September 19th, 2022 regarding the scoping application for the property. Those comments indicated necessary revisions to the access point as well as restrictions to access points onto Main Street. As shown, the access points of proposed Road A and H are not compliant with PennDOT requirements. Furthermore, the scoping application is inconsistent with the tentative plan specific to the access drive, not shown on the tentative plan, but indicated to the west of the fourth leg of the Crossing Boulevard traffic signal. That was subsequent comment in regard to our response. Our response was that the layout plan sheets have been revised to address this comment. In addition, information submitted on December 6th, prepared by Eric Mouse from Traffic Planning and Design, since the scoping meeting of 11/15 was incorporated within that submission.
And then, 19 we probably sort of addressed. Can you just describe what the comment was and what?
Sure. The comment was indicating that the original submission showed the IOP parcel as a single lot. And our response was that the layout plan had been revised to depict 6 typical commercial uses which could be developed as part of the IOP parcel.
Can you sort of beef that response up a little bit? We depicted like projected typical floor spaces. You believe that, is that correct?
Yes, and without any particular known, I don't want to call them tenant because that's not the right term, but whatever business would be on, for instance, lot 1, that's to be determined. Obviously, the differences between a photo hut and a sit-down restaurant would necessitate different requirements, such as parking and screening and building size. So at this point, it's strictly showing minimum lot size and potential build-out of 6 potential lots.
And what would happen if a developer found a tenant or a purchaser for parcels and wanted greater than that lot area or floor space? How would that be addressed as part of the final plan submission? We would change what's depicted there on the tentative plan submission.
Sure, so modification of lot lines or parking requirements, those individual lot developments would have to be submitted and reviewed by the town, reviewed by the township as far as meeting requirements subject to the IOP requirements of the ordinances.
Have you, in working through land development process, have you worked with different commercial developers as far as identifying particular floor space access, needs that they have as like their corporate design?
Yes, whether it's particular entities, McDonald's, for an example, they have their standard issue, option A, B, C footprints and their particular requirements. We would then assess that, their particular requirements against the township requirements to see, can we meet, parking, setback, height, all that kind of stuff that goes through that process.
So what we showed was a couple of potential
Correct.
typical users and what they would need for space, but again, if we didn't have an auto parts store, Tractor Supply, or whatever it might be, we might have to come back with a different configuration that might be substantially different, but we need to comply with all the requirements for stormwater parking and the like. Right, as part of that. Okay, so I think that takes care of item number 19. 20, I think we show a revised layout with supplemental information by Mr. Mouse at Traffic Planning. Correct. Number 24 was bolded. Can you identify the comment and then what the revision you made in response?
Where the comment was 25 to 35% of the common open space shall be improved for active recreational facilities. The areas identified as active recreation calculate to 34% of the open space in the chart. The chart is the discrepancy noted in the previous comment. The active recreation areas identified include proposed and existing stormwater management facilities that do not appear to qualify as quote-unquote improved for active recreational facilities in reference section 598G3A. As part of the subsequent resubmission from December 6th, our response was the layout plan sheets have been revised to depict active recreational facilities within the common open space areas.
So there were a couple of rectangles that were identified as being active rec areas that were added to certain of the open spaces. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then whether we called it out or not, the walking, biking path would also count. The areas that path proceeds through would be counted as active open space area in your interpretation?
Correct, because it's outside of the proposed individual lot lines. And please.
And 27, I think we had a clarifier. Can you just describe what the note was and what information did you provide?
Right, comment 27, the streets shall have a carway width of 28 feet and a right-of-way width of 33 feet for all streets not intended to be dedicated, and referenced internal streets of C, D, E, F, and G should have a carway width of 24 feet and a right-of-way width of 28 feet. The comment requested that we clearly specify the intent of each street regarding dedications, and we had revised to specify 28-foot cartway and 33-foot right-of-way widths for all streets not intended to be dedicated.
Number 36 was already. Can you identify the comment and responses?
For comment 36, as shown, the plan does not demonstrate compliant yard density or other zoning requirements for the potential IOD commercial space in accordance with section 628, 5B. The residential areas also require additional verification of the density provided for open space. Our response was the layout plan has been revised to depict the 6 typical commercial uses to address this comment. And I believe the other information was added regarding the residential areas to the plans.
Item number 37 is bolded. Could you identify the comment and response?
The purpose, location, and amount of common open space shall be further determined to meet the zoning requirements, and whether the areas identified are appropriate for the residential development in accordance with section 628.5.c. We indicated in our response that the layout plan had been revised to specify the type or purpose of active recreational areas.
38 was also a bolded comment. Can you describe the comment and the response?
Yes, the comment 38 is primarily regarding traffic. The plan must provide a physical design in which it provides adequate control over vehicular traffic in accordance with section 628.5.d. As presented, the trip generation evaluation and plan do not present any control of vehicular traffic. Indicated a traffic impact study will be required by SALDO section 516, as well as by PennDOT. Anticipated vehicular impacts to the adjacent roadway network have not been evaluated and therefore have not identified the anticipated improvements or in accordance with this section, adequate controls over vehicular traffic. Our response was the layout plan has been revised to show access and supplemental information submitted by Mr. Mounts, the traffic planning design, traffic engineer, have been incorporated into this second revised submission. And we acknowledge that the traffic impact study will be required. And the parties participated in a scoping meeting with PennDOT on November 15, 2022. And the applicant has a clear understanding of what will be required for the traffic impact study and for the HOPs required by PennDOT. We have included meeting notes with this resubmission.
Item number 39 was also bolded. Can you address the comment and response?
I believe it was, again, in response to the plan providing common open space, but rec facilities were not proposed in accordance with section 628.5E. As noted above, the layout plan had been revised to depict types of active recreational facilities as required by the referenced provision.
Item number 40 was bolded, but we just indicated that we acknowledge the comment. And then under the subdivision land development ordinance, the item number 6 was bolded regarding road F. Can you just describe the comment under the solid ordinance for item number 6 and the response?
Sure. Road F, where it surrounds open space N, varies in width from 24 to 42 feet. The varying width is not permitted by township standards, citing section 502.3. Our response was that the road width had been revised to provide a constant 28-foot wide cartway.
And that was on the sheet 2, sort of on the eastern end.
Sure. Road F is on the eastern edge of the property, as shown on sheet 2 of 2.
And then there was a bold for item number 9. Can you just run through the comment and response?
Again, the intersections of Road B and H with Main Street, State Route 23, are separated by approximately 750 feet. Intersections with major streets shall be no less than 1,000 feet apart in accordance with section 502.10.E. Our response was that roads A and B are proposed to be offered for dedication. All other proposed streets are to remain private, as referenced in the materials from Mr. Miles. Applicant asserts that given the existing constraints, PennDOT will allow the proposed intersections.
And then item number 10 was bolded regarding the site distance so what was the comment on response?
The general gist was that the plan did not include available site distance lines at intersections in accordance with section 502.11, and indicated, absent of those items, that the plan didn't demonstrate site distance could be compliant. Our response was that site distances had been added to the plans.
Then can you describe it was a bolded comment for item number 12, the waiver request that we have and the justification for it in terms of the municipal requirements for sidewalks?
Sure. The waiver request was sidewalks having a minimum 4 feet 4 foot width shall be installed in accordance with municipal requirements along both sides of the existing or proposed streets. Per our request letter, or per the request letter, the applicant is proposing sidewalk on one side of most streets. Sidewalk is excluded from Road A west of Road B.
That's sort of a typo, but
Yeah.
Road H.
And Road H. In consideration of the request, the applicant is offering an asphalt walk/bike path. It should be noted that the path extends from the intersection of Highcroft Drive and Willow Glen Road to just beyond the intersections of Road A and Road B, all of which is within stage 1. The next particular comment in reference to that indicated that the asphalt walk/bike path is only 4 feet in width, and indicated that width would be insufficient in accordance with typical shared bike pedestrian facilities per PennDOT guidelines, and is not compliant with the township required concrete sidewalk. The width should be increased to better accommodate the intended use. Our response was that the layout plan had been revised to address this comment regarding sidewalk and shared bike pedestrian walking trail, and without having the mentioned right in front of me or a scale. I believe we increased that to 8 foot width for the walk bike path.
And then the remainder of the comments weren't bolded, but we continued to provide, acknowledge the comments and then what responses
Correct.
you had for each. Could you identify we'll just have you identify it for the record. What we've marked as Exhibit A8.
Yes, that's a traffic planning and design document dated November 15th, 2022. The trip generation evaluation report prepared by traffic planning and design.
you identify what's been marked as exhibit number 9?
Exhibit number 9 is a craft engineering comment letter dated December 20th, 2022, as a tentative plan review of the plans dated December 6th, 2022.
That letter was provided the same date as the planning commission held its second meeting to review the tentative plan submission, is that correct?
I believe, again, my colleague, Mr. Messeri, attended that meeting, as I was in my public meeting today. Sorry, as I said, I believe that was the date of the meeting, but my colleague, Mr. Messeri, attended that in my absence.
Sure, we can run through that. That letter and what comments and additional information you provide with Mr. Messeri for that. Can you identify what's been marked as exhibit A10?
Is a December 20th, 2022 letter from Marley Snyder, attorneys at law, to the Carnarvon Township Planning Commission,
Requesting waivers.
requesting the waivers and modifications.
And the item numbers relate to the review letter
Correct.
that we received relative to the review letter that we referenced as exhibit A9, prepared by Mr. Anderson.
Correct.
So these waivers would be in addition to the waivers that were contained in the initial October 24 submission.
Yes.
And then we got a number of review letters. I'd just like to run through them, so you can identify them for the record. Can you identify what's been marked as A11?
Sure, it's an email chain, referencing an email response from Public Works Forum.
And to the extent that there's,
With the road work, in regards to the proposed road work. Connections.
so there's a reference to Climber Hill Road, that's outside the proposed project area. We don't oppose it, correct, any impact involvement for that.
There's no physical connection.
And then there's a reference to recreational facilities, be provided within the project area.
Correct.
Can you identify what's marked as exhibit A12?
B12 is a December 14, 2022 letter from Technicon Enterprises, Inc. To the Planning Commission, which is, Technicon is, as indicated, as the consulting fire marshal for the township. Indicates his comments in compliance with Carnarvon Salvo, as well as 2 recommendations and a note on townhouses should be sprinkled in accordance with uniform construction code.
Can you identify what's been marked as A13?
A13 is a November 15, 2022 memo from the Carnarvon Township Police Department, addressed to the Carnarvon Township Planning Commission, with some comments, raised concerns regarding truck access route being allowed to turn south on Morgantown Road, and indicating some preferences for how that traffic should come out at a traffic light, as well as some comments with regards to proposed dedicated and private roads for roadway, parking, sidewalk.
Can you identify what's been marked as A14?
A14 is a November 22nd, 2022 Berks County Planning Commission review letter, which was their review of our initial tentative PRD plan submission. Which generally indicates compliance with the Berks County Comprehensive Plan, indicates consistent with the County Comprehensive Plan 2030. And then also some recommendations and questions that we would intend on continuing to address and identify through the process.
As part of the final plan?
As part of the final plan, correct.
Just a moment. I don't have any additional questions for Mr. O'Hara.
Who wants to go next? There you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. O'Hara, my name is Michael Gill. I represent the Township Planning Commission. In this matter, just a few questions for you. Would you please turn your attention back to exhibit...
Microphone.
Oh, sorry about that. Mr. O'Hara, would you please turn your attention back to exhibit A2?
Is that the agreement?
It is. It is. You have that there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After the introductory paragraph in which the parties are identified, there's language that reads, "The purchaser is acting on behalf of a yet-to-be-formed single-purpose entity. Purchaser has no intent to obtain legal or equitable title to the property."